everyone, and welcome to the free GRE Prep Hour from Manhattan Prep. So excited to be here with all of you, and our goal is to just learn some new things about how to approach the GRE. So before we dive in, let me just get a sense of you guys. We're going to be using this chat function. Notice I'm saying hello. Oops, didn't mean to have the caps lock on. Hello there in the chat. So I want you guys all to tell me in the chat window, where are you dialing in from tonight? I am in Manhattan, in Chelsea, in our lovely Manhattan Prep office. I don't know if you can see, probably can't see out the window, but there is One World Trade Center. Nope, all you can see is reflections of the lights in the window. But in beautiful New York, where are you guys dialing in from tonight? Tell us in the chat. Ooh, got a lot of California. Where in California? San Francisco, nice. Hello, hello. All right. So we've got folks from all over the country. One other thing that's always true when we're looking at GRE is folks are all over the place, but we're also applying to lots of different programs. So tell us in the chat, what kinds of programs do you want to apply to? Are you going for a PhD in mathematics, or a master's in English, or an MBA, or yeah, tell us what is it that you're interested in that you want to apply for? Teaching nutrition, oh cool. Didn't even know they had PhDs in those, that sounds awesome. Nice. Human computer interaction, that sounds fascinating, cool. Master's of Education, so I got my Master's of Education last year. Mine was in neuroscience and psychology in education. So this is what I like to nerd out on. Nice, nice, nice. Cool, well, it is really exciting to have you folks here. So what we're going to be looking at, what we always do in any free GRE prep hour, is just investigate one different aspect of the test and how we can approach it well. So we're going to, since we're a relatively small group here tonight, we're going to be using some polling so that I can see how you answer things. So notice that there is, right above my name, a little button that looks like a lowercase a. So I want you to go ahead and pull in, give me an A if you've taken the real thing, B if you haven't taken it, but you have done a practice exam, and give me a C if totally new to the GRE, no practice exam. So instead of typing it in the chat window, if you can use that button that's right above my name, you'll see in the participants window, there's like a smiley face, there's one with a clock on it, there's one with a hand, and then there's one with a lowercase a. All right, so I'm seeing a couple A's, but a lot of B's. So a lot of you have taken at least one practice test, but you haven't taken the real thing yet. And then a couple of you brand new to this whole process. So wherever you are in the process, we're here to learn a little bit tonight. Let's try the polling thing one more time. I'm going to clear this poll. And then this time I want you to poll in when it comes to what you're concerned about with the GRE. Give me an A if more concerned about quant, B if more concerned about the verbal, C if both, and then here we'll add in a D if not sure, haven't studied enough to know yet. So use that polling button rather than doing it in the chat window. All right, so we've got a pretty even mix here. I've got a lot of A's, but also a lot of B's, handful of C's. So that's the other thing about a GRE is it's very mixed. Some of you might want to study a lot more quant. Some of you might want to study a lot more verbal. One thing that everyone in here is definitely going to have to do is put the work to practice knowing what the test feels like and to practice under timed conditions. There's an official guide published by ETS that you should definitely pick up. But one other thing I really strongly recommend is the Manhattan Prep 5-pound guide of practice problems. This is a giant 6-book of practice problems that you can use to do timed sets, to do individual problems, to work on things just in particular topics. So unlike the official guide, which is all mixed, this one can let you work on just rate problems or just exponent problems. So we're going to be doing problems out of this book here this evening. So here's the plan. One thing that a lot of people struggle with on the GRE is data interpretation. These are the charts, the graphs that can kind of mess with us a lot. So we're going to look at how the GRE likes to make these tricky, and we're going to think about how to answer the right question. So for those of you who have taken a practice test or taken the real thing, let's actually do some even more basic review about GRE test structure. So data interpretation, this only exists on the quant section. You're not going to see data interpretation on the verbal section. But when we are looking at that quant section, oops, got a weird pop-up from Blackboard. Blackboard is sometimes a very picky interface. So in a GRE quant section, how many questions are there in each section? Anna was the first one to get it right. There are 20 questions. 20 questions in every section, and you have how much time to do those? Close. You get 30 minutes for the verbal section, but you get 35 minutes for each quant section. So, all right, quick math question for you. If you have 20 questions to do in 35 minutes, approximately how long should you spend per question? Yeah, roughly 1.75 minutes per question. Or another way to think of it is less than 2 minutes per question. You have to do these really, really quickly. But it's not easy to do these really quickly, as I'm sure you've seen if you've taken timed practice tests. And I strongly recommend that before you take the real thing, you do at least a handful of practice tests accurately timed. Okay, so that's the GRE quant section in a nutshell. So the type of question, we've done other pre-prep hours about quantitative comparisons and word problems and things like that. So I want to look specifically at data interpretation. Typically, in a quant section of 20 questions, you might get 1 or 2 of these data interpretation that have a single chart. So I'll call these 1 or 2 one-offs. You'll get 1 chart and 1 question that goes with it. And then you'll get typically 3 or 4 questions that go with a big chart or graph or a series of charts or graphs. So this can represent anywhere from 3 to 5 of the 20 questions that you get. It's an important section. And for a lot of people, these can be time-consuming. For a lot of people, these can be really, really tricky. So I have a colleague here at Manhattan Prep who Liz Mosby. She is a brilliant instructor and a member of our curriculum team. She's also a professor of statistics. It's really hard to say. And so she has this theory, which is that GRE charts and graphs on data interpretation are the worst. They violate every rule of good graphical data representation. So one thing that I really want to look at is why does the GRE have bad graphs or tricky graphs? How are they trying to mess with us? And then, how can we make sure that we're answering the right question? So, I want to try something. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, let's say 2.5 minutes, to look at this next graph and to answer the following question. And I made it a numeric entry on purpose, just to be extra sneaky. I doubt that they would do this on the real thing, but what I want you to do, I'm going to set the chat to private only. So everyone, give me a little chat that says hello. Go ahead and just type hello in the chat window and you'll see what happens. Notice that it pops up another window. It goes just to me and not to the main room. So everything you say will be private. No one else in the room will see it. I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes to work on this problem. And then I want us to discuss why this is really tricky. So go for it. Okay, so that was 2.5 minutes. Now for some of you put in an answer really quickly. So let's talk about a couple things. One, I want to talk about this graph. And then 2, I want to talk about answering the right question. So let's take the question away for a second and just analyze this weird graph. This is the kind of thing that the GRE likes to do a lot. They give us graphs that are not the way that we expect information to be laid out. So I'm going to set the chat back to main room. So if you type in the main room chat window, everyone will be able to see it. So there are a few ways that I think that this graph is violating good design. So what do you guys think? Anyone tell me in the chat, why is this bad design? Why is this bad visual representation of the data? Anything you think was weird or confusing? Yeah, for one thing, it's horizontal. Like we're used to bar graphs that are vertical. That's the normal way to represent bar graphs. So okay, we flip our orientation to the side. It kind of messes with that expectation of x-axis and y-axis. Yeah, exactly. If it's horizontal instead of vertical, our expectations of the axes are flipped. Ooh, the number increments. Okay, Matt, can you explain a little bit more about that? What do you mean aren't exactly precise? Yeah, so we've got these lines at the 5, but then this one was in the middle, so we have to guesstimate, is it 17, is it 18? So this is something that the GRE often does. My recommendation, and this sounds so silly, but I promise you I do this when I take the real test, I take my scrap paper and I just hold it up in front of, like, covering up parts of the graph so that I can line it up really directly. So, you know, don't draw on the screen with your pencil, but you can hold your hand up or hold your paper up to the screen to sort of more accurately judge those distances. What else? There's something really big here that violates our expectation of what bar graphs are supposed to do. And I feel like maybe Brooke figured it out. I feel like Kamana figured it out. There's something really weird here. Yes. Did you guys catch this? This was the biggest thing. Percent. Yes. So here's the question that we should be asking ourselves. What does that represent? Percent of what? So for example, let's just look at the top bar because it's easy to look at. The green bar in the life sciences. Okay, so if we line that up, try to line it up kind of exactly as if we were lining our paper up on the screen. So just below 30, okay, that looks like 29%. But 29% of what? Exactly, of the total number of seniors. It's not a percent of the life sciences, it's not a percent of the total college. This is really weird. Here's what's weird about it. We expect that bar graphs are something that we can trust our eyes on. If I look at social sciences here, longer green bar than red bar should mean more seniors than juniors. But does it mean that? Maybe, maybe not. So this gets really tricky. We actually have to do the math because here, this would be, okay, looks like 18%, but out of, a smaller number. Let's actually do that. Let's play around with this. Let's ignore the other bars for the moment, and let's just look at life science, or social sciences. I know that that wasn't the one that we were really looking at, but ignoring these, just looking at social sciences. What would this number be? Looks like 18%, but of what? Well, not of the social science seniors. It's actually 18% of all of the seniors, so of the 1,500 seniors. And then this bar, which looks smaller, right? Like the red bar is smaller than the green bar, there should be less of the juniors. But that one's going to be 15% of what? Of the 1,800, the total number of juniors. Without touching that to the calculator, although maybe some of you are already done that calculation, can you just estimate what's going to be greater, 18% of 1,500 or 15% of 1,800? Which one do we have more of? Kind of hard to tell. It might not be what our eyeballs tell us. Okay, go ahead, punch that into the calculator. What do you guys end up with? They're equal. Isn't that crazy? They're equal. That means that we can't trust our eyeballs at all. The bar that looks longer might actually represent the exact same number of people, or maybe it represents less people. So we expect that on a bar graph we can trust our eyes, but we can't trust our eyes because it's different totals. if you didn't spend that time dissecting the graph first, there's no way you were going to get any of the questions right, really, if you missed that idea that it's percent of different totals. That's crazy. If you walk into work with a graph like this, you get fired, and rightly so. This is a terrible representation of data, and they're doing it on purpose because they want to see, did you read the directions? Did you read the prompt? Did you read what the title was telling you? Did you look at the key? Did you read the axes? So let's come back to this question. And actually, what's funny, what I didn't do on purpose when I put this question together is that social sciences, arts, and humanities, the seniors and juniors were exactly the same as we had before. But let's come back to this question. Approximately what percent of the students in the arts and humanities are juniors? I had a couple of people respond saying, oh, this is right in the middle of 10 and 20, so that's 15%. That should feel way too easy. So a few just good general rules to keep in mind. Here's one rule that applies on pretty much any GRE problem. There's no such thing as what I would call a one-move answer. As in, if I ask you, if the question asks you for a percent and you just pluck that number off the graph, that's not going to be the answer. It's got to be more complicated than that, right? So what's this question really asking us for? What do we have to do to get this answer? Yeah, we need to calculate the total number of students. We need to calculate the actual number of juniors. And then we also, if we're going to find the juniors as a percent of all students in the arts and humanities, we need to calculate the number of seniors and the number of sophomores. So because these are the same calculations that we just did, shrinking the font so that we can see it on here, the seniors are going to be 18% rather of 1,500, and then we're looking at 15% of 1,800. And then for the sophomores, that's going to be 20% of 1,900. So when we calculate the number of juniors, we ended up with 270. The seniors also ended up being 270. And what about the sophomores? What did you guys get for that? $380. Okay, so if we then add those up, the total number, we end up with I'm making you guys do the work on this one. Yeah, we end up with 920. And then the question that we're trying to answer, we're looking for the juniors as a percent of the total. So we just divide. And this brings me to a really great point. So Kamana, I think that you're right on target by saying it's close enough to 30%. If this were multiple choice and it said approximately, and you ended up with, when you plug this into the actual calculator, we end up with 29%. But you might see an answer choice that said 30% or something like that. If this were multiple choice, it's very likely that you would see trap answers for 15% or something like 20% because it looks like less than a third of the total. But what we ended up with was less than a third of the total. But we might get really confused, pick something that's not quite the right answer if we were not careful about reading the graph. Does anyone have any questions on this one before we move on to something else? Yep, I just did. And the great thing is on the GRE, you can plug things into the calculator. If we're looking for what percent is that number 270 that we got of the total of 920, we can simply do 270 divided by 920 and get that answer. Yeah, any other questions? Or let me know if you need further clarification on that. All right. So I want to show you a problem from the Manhattan Prep 5-pound guide. But before we do that, I'm going to give you this chart nice and big because it is confusing. So before we even look at the questions, take a minute to parse what is going on in this graph. All right, this one's kind of strange, right? Again, this is a really weird representation of data. So what's weird about this? Just tell me anything that you found confusing when you were trying to make sense of what's going on here. Oops, sorry, let me set the chat back to main chat so you can go ahead and type in the main chat again. So if you said something to me in a private chat before, someone said something great, which was two different parts of data represented on the same graph. Yes, we're used to axes meaning just one thing. So we've got this axis, which is the number of pets. This axis is the number of households that have that number of pets. This axis is monthly spending. What? How can we have two different y-axes? That's crazy. So I love that question, Max. I think that that's such an important question to ask. One thing that I would do if I had a question like this on test day, I'd look up at the clock and I would say, okay, am I ahead? Am I behind? Am I right on target? If I'm already behind on time, I'm going to put a pin in this. Kind of click through, put in some placeholder guess answers, but move on to the questions that come after that. Actually, this is an important point to make with data interpretation. We talked about how many questions you get, but the great thing about the GRE is that they give us the same things in the same order. So in a quant section, the order will always be this: 7 or 8 quantitative comparison questions. Then after that, you'll get typically, so the numbers can vary slightly, but the order is always the same: 5 or 6 discrete quants, which is just what they call multiple choice, regular multiple choice, numeric entry, and choose all that apply. Then after that is where you'll get your set of 3 or maybe 4 data interpretations. And then after that, the remaining 4 or 5 discrete quants. It will always come in this order. We recommend going a little bit faster through the quantitative comparisons, those QC questions up front. For these, you want to spend about, so if we're thinking about timing on average, for QC questions, you want to spend about a minute on average, if you can, up to a minute 15. But see if you can move through those more quickly than the multiple choice ones. And that way on the multiple choice and numeric entry and those ones, you can spend about 2 minutes on average. Data interpretation as well, about 2 minutes on average. So the way that that might break down is 1 minute for the graph, and then 2 minutes, or sorry, rather, a minute and a half per question. And then for that last set of discrete quant, same timing as before, 2 minutes per question. So if the data interpretation set takes you a really, really, really long time, then you're not going to have time to get to those last 4 or 5 discrete quant questions, and maybe those were gettable. Maybe they would have been easy for you. So timing balance is so crucial. So if you hit a graph that is so confusing that you don't even know where to start, you know what? Put a pin in it, do the other ones, and come back. So that's my first recommendation. But in terms of, okay, if we have the time, if we're actually going to dig in, here's where I look. One thing, actually, that surprisingly people forget to look at first the name of the graph or chart. Because sometimes in the name it'll be like percent of or something like that. There might be important information in there. Then look at your axes and your legends, your keys, as need be. And then basically look for major trends in the data. So for example, on the class one, here's a major trend that I saw. Lots of sophomores undeclared, not many juniors or seniors, and then seniors tend to have gravitated more to life sciences and business, less so with the sophomores and juniors. Beyond that, I'm not telling myself much. That's the one general trend of like major differences here, major differences here, and then relatively similar for all 3 here and here. I'm not going to dig in too much further than that though. That's just what my eye is telling me. So when I look at this, oof, all right, name of the graph, survey of 557 households with pets. All right, now I'm trying to make sense of my axes. I've got 2 y-axes, so the first thing I'm going to look at is the x-axis, number of pets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So then I look and, okay, gray is number of households with this number of pets. So, okay, this axis is going to correspond to the bar graph part. So lots of households with 2 pets, quite a few with 3, then with 1, then 4, then very few with 5. And then all of these things correspond to spending. So maximum, minimum, and then average for these households. So, okay, these weird symbols correspond with this axis. Bar graph corresponds with this axis. So we basically just have 2 graphs in one. All right, now that we've made sense of what's going on here, let's try a question or 2. Take a minute or so and pull in, don't put it in the chat, pull in your answer for this one. Take 15 more seconds. All right, so you guys did great on this one. I want to point out a couple of things here when we're talking about data interpretation strategy. Sometimes, like on that first one that we did, we've got a complicated graph and then a complicated question about that graph. Here, the question that was being asked was a little bit more straightforward. Approximately what % of surveyed households have more than 3 pets? So, a few key words here. One is approximately. Here is one thing that I want you to make sure that you change about your process if you haven't been doing this yet. Treat the answer choices as part of the problem itself. I want you to always, always, always look at the answer choices. My HP got set to choices before solving. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You know what? We probably don't actually need to do much solving on this. We might be able to eyeball it. There actually are a fair number of real GRE data interpretation questions that we can just eyeball. More than 3 pets. Well, that means that we're looking at 4 and 5, right? Not too much mystery there. Just at a glance, what answers would you get rid of? Without doing any math, tell me what you should cross off before you even start. You can tell me in the main chat. Yeah, D and E for sure. 4 and 5 are both teeny tiny little pieces of bar graph, so those are out. Just get rid of those. And then maybe we can do some math. What was nice about this graph, I mean, it seemed like a lot of stuff that they were throwing at us, but they were actually nice. They gave us actual numbers here. So when we add that up, we get a total of 58, and then that's out of what? 557. Always read your title. We don't want to actually take the time to add all the other ones up. They tell us there in the title that we had a total of 557. Don't do the math. That is roughly 10%. 58 out of 580 would have been perfectly 10%, but this is just barely more than 10%. So we didn't need to use the other y-axis. We didn't need to use any of that information about money. This one wasn't too bad. Let's try another one. Take a minute or so here. All right, let's talk about this one. But before we actually talk about this one, I want to talk about something else that I hope you will keep in mind. One thing is always look at the answer choices. One other bit of general advice, not just for data interpretation, but for everything, quant and verbal, is to think about the traps. How is the test writer trying to mess with our heads? Because they're always trying to mess with our heads. So, which of the following is the median number? Well, our options, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 pets, so the one in the middle is 3. The median of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 3, so the answer is C. What would you tell a student who picked that? What is the issue with that? It's too easy. Exactly. That violates that rule that we said before about the one move answer. If we just pick the middle thing off the graph, it's not going to be that easy. So it's not about just the median in the set of possible number of pets. It's if we laid out the list of all 557 of these people, it would be 70, 70, 70, 70, 70, it would be 70 instances of 1. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, count that 70 times. And then 246 instances of 2, 183 instances of 3, and so on. So that would be a way too easy answer. So how do we find the median? So the median in a set of 557 data points is, yeah, we could list them all in numerical order, although I think that would take too long. That is theoretically what we're doing, but Kiana has the right idea. The halfway point is going to be your median. So think about this though. When we're looking for a median, if we are looking for the median of 5 things, so hey, before I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's easy to look. I mean, when there are 5, we can just glance. It's the middle one. But if we did 5 over 2, that would give us 2.5, right? So how would we use that to figure out, we can't have like the 2.5th term. So when we're looking for the median, one thing we can do, if there's an odd number of terms, divide by 2, and then it's round up from there. Because what's going to happen is we've got 2 less than that median, 2 more than that median. What if we're looking for the median of 6 things? If we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So over here, sorry, we round up, it's going to be our 3rd term. Here, if we have 6 things, 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. Does that mean the median is our 3rd term? It's going to be the average of the 2 middle ones, so it's going to be in between our 3rd and our 4th term. So what you can do is divide by 2, but then it's going to be above that. Just as here, divide by 2, you round up, it's above that. For an even number of terms, if we get 3, it's between the 3rd and 4th term. So, coming back to here. If we have 557 data points, 557 divided by 2 gives us what? What precisely? $278.5. So the rule is we round up. Our median is going to be at our 278, or sorry, 200. If it's 278.5, 279th term. Is everyone with me so far? Does this make sense? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, I'm going to assume we're good. If you have any questions, let me know. So 278 terms, if we were to lay them all out in order. So where is that going to happen? Well, we kind of look along. Our first 70 terms are going to be here. And then this 246 starts at the 71st term. So between the two of these, 70 plus 246, our 279th term is going to occur somewhere in here. So the correct answer was not 3, but 2. Is this making sense? Are we feeling okay about this? Yes, absolutely. Oh, the one thing I should have mentioned at the beginning, you are more than welcome to take screenshots during any of these GRE prep hours of anything you like here. These are all Manhattan prep questions and things like that. So how do we know to round up? It's this idea. 5 terms divided by 2 is not actually going to give us the middle term. It's going to tell us how many terms are on either side of that middle. So it's like, if you imagine splitting this 3 down the middle, there are 2.5 terms on either side. In this set of 6, splitting it in the middle, there are 3 terms on either side, which is what tells us it's in between the 3rd and the 4th term. So yes, the answer to that previous question was 2, not 3. Max, did that answer your question about rounding? Yeah, exactly. 2.5 terms on either side means it is that 3rd term. That's the one that we're looking at. Yeah. All right, let's try one more. Give this one a shot. And yes, the answer on the previous one was B, not C, correct. All right, give this one a try. I may have accidentally cleared some of your answers, so even if you're already pulled in, pull in again here. Take another 15 seconds. All right, let's talk about this one. For those of you who got to an answer really quickly, and you're wondering, wait, why is she giving us all this time? Be careful. I'm going to turn the chat back on so you can type in the main chat window. What answer here would be way too easy to be a right answer? E, exactly. If you just saw greatest average and then, oh, the dot is average, the one that's highest on this chart is here. So it's got to be E. Be really careful. That's a one-move answer. Picking something off the chart, clicking that answer. It's pretty much never going to be that easy. So what key piece were we missing there if we chose that? What part of this? Yes, the spending per pet. That was the key here, per pet. So we can't just pluck that number and say, oh, that's roughly 150, and that's it. What do we need to do? What operation do we need to perform here? Division. Take that average for each of these and divide it by the number of pets. This average divided by the number of pets. This average divided by the number of pets, and so on. So yeah, we're going to have to use the calculator a bunch of times. It's a little bit annoying. But take your time to do that. Take the time. Cannot stress this enough to answer the right question. Once we do all that calculation, those of you who did all of those operations, you would find that people with 4 pets would get the highest average spending per pet. So the answer here was D. Questions on this one? Does everyone see why we had to do all the extra work here? It's annoying, they always make you do lots of work. If you ever feel like you haven't done any work, you pick an answer really quickly without doing any work, question that. Be skeptical. That is pretty much the best advice I can give you across the board, quant or verbal. Be skeptical. Assume that the test writer is trying to trick you somehow. All right, well, if there aren't any questions on this, I want to tell you, for those of you who are studying, we do these free prep hours, but you're also welcome to attend the class for free. You can attend the session 1 of any of our courses, online or in person. If you're in the New York City area, I teach classes in person here. I also have an upcoming online class that starts Wednesday nights in June. I don't remember exactly when, but if you go to that website, you'll see it. So you are more than welcome to attend that first session. Even if you don't think you'd sign up for the real class, you're welcome to attend anyway. It's free. Definitely invest the time. I'm not going to tell you that you have to invest money. You don't have to. But you definitely have to invest the time if you want to do well on this test. But it's not just about learning content. It's about really learning to answer the right questions, to think about what the test writer was really asking. So I'm so glad that you guys came and stopped by. Thank you, thank you. Stop by our website. There's lots of other great free advice on our blog, lots of articles there about topics or things that you might be struggling with. So best of luck. I hope that you all do very well on this test and have a fabulous evening. Take care.